Welcome to the Southern Almanac, a new short weekly edition to take on the South. I'm Matt Simmons, the Assistant Director of the Institute for Southern Studies and the producer of Take on the South. I'll be your host for this new short format episode we'll be releasing. Don't worry, we're not getting rid of our bread and butter, the longer form interviews and conversations that appear every other week or so during the academic year. Rather, the Southern Almanac will be a new addition to your feed most every Monday afternoon, a short eclectic show where we bring together Southern history, culture, literature, and more, generally around a single theme, curated by yours truly. If in our main show we want to take on the South through a series of thought-provoking conversations and interviews, in this Almanac edition, I want to celebrate the variety, beauty, and mystery of this place that I always have and, God willing, always will call home. I'll be looking at the South from A to Z, using a particular Southern thing as my stepping off point for that week. I'll also be inviting you to send in your own thoughts, reminiscences, audio, photos, and so on related to that thing. Email them to digitalussouth@gmail.com and we'll look to share your contributions. So then with that introduction out of the way, let's get to this week's Southern thing. Starting with the letter A. The letter A is for azaleas. While jonquils and other bulbs may say that winter's wet, cold grip on the Southland is waning, Southerners know that we mustn't get too excited when they start to show up. Winter will come back 2, 3, 4 times more. If you're not from the South, well, we don't have spring necessarily. We have false spring, second winter, third winter, second false spring. We finally get a real spring sometime around pollen season and so on and so forth. It's a funny sort of way we do spring here in the South, but it is a beautiful, beautiful time of year, all joking aside. And one of the most beautiful parts of Southern Springs are the azaleas. Walking through the campus of the University of South Carolina today, here in early April, I'm struck by how beautiful and just enormous so many of the azaleas and their multicolored blossoms are. The rich tapestry of color, the beauty, the magnificence of these plants that are everywhere, not only around campus, but around Columbia and throughout central South Carolina and well into your neck of the woods, wherever in the South you're listening from. But what are azaleas? Where do they come from and why are they such a significant part of the Southern springtime landscape? Clemson Extension Service calls azaleas the, quote, Southern signature plants in South Carolina landscapes, something that will be equally true for any number of Southern states. In Tennessee, and my home state of North Carolina, and Virginia, and Georgia, well, azaleas are the Southern signature plant there as well. Yet, South Carolina has a special connection to the plant. The deciduous wild varieties of azaleas, so common in the South's mountains, grow well in South Carolina's uplands. And while I'm on the wild varieties, y'all, I'll admit I do not know the difference between the wild native azaleas and rhododendrons, nor if there's even a real difference between them. If any of y'all have horticultural knowledge and can explain to me what the difference is, please email me, digitalussouth@gmail.com, and let me know. I'll be glad to share your clarifications here on the air. Most Southerners are, at least if honestly not more, familiar with the cultivated evergreen variety of azaleas that so many of us so proudly have in our yards and gardens and that show out so beautifully this time of year. These plants are native to East Asia, and they were reportedly brought to America first by the Reverend John Grimke Drayton, an Episcopal priest and the owner of Magnolia Plantation in the South Carolina Lowcountry. According to the sources I've seen, Reverend Grimke Drayton seemed to have brought these plants to Magnolia Plantation in the late 1830s or 1840s, and it is there at Magnolia Plantation where, according to what seems to be at least legend, the plants were first cultivated for use in Southern landscape gardening. Perhaps the Clemson Extension Agency should then update its description of the azaleas. They are maybe not the Southern signature plants in South Carolina landscapes. They are perhaps the South Carolina signature plants in Southern landscapes. And one of the innumerable expressions of the complexity of the South and Southern peoples, Reverend Grimke Drayton was the nephew of the sisters Sarah and Angelina Grimke, two daughters of South Carolina's Lowcountry, who, according to the South Carolina Encyclopedia, quote, rejected a privileged lifestyle rooted in a slave economy and became nationally known abolitionists no longer welcome in South Carolina. After leaving the South and settling in New England, Sarah and Angelina found themselves, quote, cut off from their family and community in the South, but not alone in the North. Their intimate circle of friends, which included Harriet Beecher Stowe, was supplemented by new family members. On May 14, 1838, Angelina married Theodore Weld, a minister, abolitionist, and temperance speaker. They had 2 sons and a daughter. Angelina's role as mother did not lessen her commitment to abolition and, later, women's rights. After emancipation, the Grimke sisters discovered that they had nephews living in the North who were the sons of their younger brother Henry and a slave mistress. The Charleston Grimkes had refused to acknowledge their biracial relatives, but Sarah and Angelina cultivated a friendly relationship with them, a relationship that further distanced them from Charleston's white society. That's all from the South Carolina Encyclopedia's entry on the Grimke sisters. If the Grimke sisters were daughters of the South who turned away from the region, a daughter of New England would come to embrace it in the years following the end of the Civil War. Constance Fenimore Woolson, grandniece of the quintessential Northern novelist of the early Republic, James Fenimore Cooper, traveled widely throughout the South, producing both travelogues and fiction. Woolson's greatest literary achievement is arguably her 1880 short story collection, Rodman the Keeper, which describes Southerners, both black and white, as well as Northerners and others who have come to the region in the years following the end of the war, adjusting to and attempting to make sense of the South in the new post-Reconstruction reality. And yet, as good as that short story collection is, Woolson makes no mention of azaleas in it. For that, we have to turn to a December 1875 travelogue that she writes for the New York-based Harper's Magazine, where she describes the azaleas she sees at the aforementioned Magnolia Plantation. Woolson writes, 7 persons touching fingertips can just encircle the silphied rose tree, 17 feet in height by 20 feet wide. There are also many rare trees and shrubs, among them the sacred tree of the Grand Lama, Cupressius lusticanica. Sorry about my Latin pronunciation there. I apologize. But the glory of the garden is the gorgeous coloring of the azaleas. Some of the bushes 16 and 17 feet through by 12 feet high, others 19 and 20 feet through by 13 feet high, solid masses of blossoms in all the shades of red from palest pink to deepest crimson, and now and then a pure white bush like a bride in her snowy lace. It is almost impossible to give a Northerner an idea of the affluence of color in this garden when its flowers are in bloom. So far, Woolson. Such a description of the magnificence of azaleas comports with the comments of the great Southern garden writer Elizabeth Lawrence, who, in her 1942 book, A Southern Garden, a handbook for the Middle South, notes that when planted around edges, borders, and in less forgiving parts of the Southern garden, azaleas' deep, vibrant colors, quote, make for a gay splash, for these are among the best shrubs for adverse conditions. No other evergreens will bloom in deeper shade or grow in poor, drier soil. That vibrancy of color and the drama of azaleas at the edges of Southern landscapes make them an inescapable part of one of the most familiar rites of Southern spring, the Masters Golf Tournament in Augusta, Georgia. The New Georgia Encyclopedia notes that, quote, the natural beauty of the course's 18 holes, each adorned with a plant from which it gets its name, and the fact that the golf calendar did not already include a major event during those months made spring the ideal time for the Masters to be held. Moreover, early April was the best time to catch the nation's sports writers as they returned north from baseball's spring training in Florida. A few days in Augusta provided them with a respite from their travels and from the national pastime. In sum, the schedule, the weather, the environment, the competition, the business leadership of Clifford Roberts, and the presence of Bobby Jones all combined to make the Masters a success from the beginning. Of course, I must note, they hint at but do not make fully explicit the role of azaleas in making the tournament so successful in our own day. After all, hole 13, part of the famous Amen Corner, is named for the beautiful shrub. We thus see that the azalea is deeply associated with so many ways of understanding, approaching, and fantasizing about the South. The Chinese call the plant the thinking about home bush, and many Southerners would agree with this sentiment, as the azalea puts so many of us in mind of the wonders of this place in the spring. This beautiful hardy shrub reflects the beauty of the South, reminds us of the region's complex history, and points to how the South has always been simultaneously a real embodied place and a site of escapist fantasy, both for those from the region and those from beyond its borders. Send us your photographs of azaleas or your thoughts and reminiscences about the role of azaleas in the Southern landscape. Email us at digitalussouth@gmail.com. Include your name and whatever social media handles you'd like us to include. We'll pick a few and share them here on the show and on our Twitter and Instagram accounts, where you can follow us at U of SC South. I want to end with a poem. Unfortunately, try as I might, I couldn't find a Southern poem specifically about azaleas, but I was able to find a great poem about Southern spring, new life, and art. I thus end today with a poem from the great Georgia poet Sidney Lanier. Here, his 1887 poem, The Bee. What time I paced at pleasant morn, a deep and dewy wood, I heard a mellow hunting horn make dim report of Diane's lusty hood, far down a heavenly hollow. Mine ear, though fain, had pain to follow. Terra, it twanged. Tara, tara. It blew, yet wavered oft and flew, most fickle wise about or here or there. A music now from earth and now from air. But on a sudden, lo! I marked a blossom shiver to and fro, with dainty inward storm. And there within, a down-drawn trump of yellow jessamine, a bee thrust up its sad gold body lustily, all in a honey madness hotly bound, on blissful burglary. A cunning sound in that wing music held me. Down I lay in amber shades of many a golden spray, where looping low with languid arms, the vine in wreaths of ravishment did overtwine, her kneeling live oak, a thousandfold to plight, herself unto her own true stalwart knight. As some dim blur of distant music nears, the long desiring sense, and slowly clears to forms of time and apprehensive tune, so, as I lay, full soon, interpretation throve, the bee's fanfare, through sequent films of discourse vague as air, passed to plain words, while, fanning faint perfume, the bee o'erhung a rich unrifled bloom. O earth, fair lordly blossom soft to shine upon the star-prank universal vine, hast naught for me? To thee come I, a poet, hereward happily blown, and from out another world-flower lately flown. Wilt ask, what profit e'er a poet brings? He beareth starry stuff about his wings, to pollen thee and sting thee fertile. Nay, if still thou narrow thy contracted way, world-flower, if thou refuse me, world-flower, if thou abuse me, and hoist thy stamen spear-point high, to wound my wing and mar mine eye, nathless I'll drive me to thy deepest sweet, yea, richlier shall that pain the pollen beat, from me to thee, for off these pollens be, fine dust from wars that poets wage for thee. But, O beloved earth bloom soft to shine upon the universal jessamine, prithee abuse me not, prithee refuse me not, yield, yield the heartsome honey love to me, hid in thy nectary. And as I sank into a dimmer dream, the pleading bee's song-burthened soul did seem, hast ne'er a honey drop of love for me in thy huge nectary? Until next time, this is Matt Simmons saying y'all take it easy.